Dear friends, first of all, I apologize for not being able to speak either in Urdu or in Hindi. I stand here in solidarity with the people of this area, and I want to express some of my feelings towards the topic that was selected by SIO for discussion today. The first issue that I want to take up for discussion is the issue of fascism that's growing in India. The first and foremost thing is that fascism is not only an ideology of the state, or it's not only something that is represented by one organization or the other. It's a growing disease of the nation. That the fascist forces look at our country as if it is a monolithic society where everybody who does not fit into that monolithic notion of our nation is not worthy of living here. That kind of assertion of a particular idea of our nation, where whoever is different from them is supposed to be not worthy of living here. That is a very dangerous proposition. And it is against those kinds of notions that we have to fight. Not only in the politics of our country, but also in our society, where such notion of hatred towards others is propagated, obviously for political reasons, as was mentioned by the two previous speakers. And therefore the immediate concern for all of us is to address this question of what kind of a nation that we want to live in. And for me, it should be a nation where the diversity of this country, its religious diversity, its cultural diversity, is well intact. It is protected. And we know that there is no other way for us to live in this country. For protecting this diversity of this nation, it should be a secular nation. Because our idea of secularism in this nation is that the diversity of this nation is protected. Not only by law, by the government, but also by the mutual understanding of people in our society. What happens now with the state in India is that it behaves as if the ideas that are propagated by the fascist forces are its own ideas. That the state also now considers certain people as not worthy of living. They have to be dealt with. That is the idea of the state. Irrespective of which political party is ruling the country, which is controlling the state. That is a dangerous situation, which goes against the very values of secularism and of the life of communities in this country as a country which not only tolerates other kinds of beliefs, but which is proud of its diversity. And therefore, the kind of extreme force that is used on its own people by the ideology of fascism, but also by the force of the state, that's a very dangerous situation. You see, if an organization or another preaches hatred, the society somehow have to deal with it. But if the state preaches hatred, it's a dangerous situation because the state has the monopoly of force. And it is talking to the people with force. And if the state does that, we have no other way to resolve conflicts of this sort. And therefore it becomes the responsibility of citizens like us to make the politics of the state not only to understand that it should not use force, but to force the state through our democratic will that the state does not behave the way it behaves now towards its own minorities, towards its own people. That should not happen. And therefore it is a responsibility of citizens here and everywhere in the country to see that the state does not go towards that extent. And we know, we sit here in the context of what happened here in Jamia Nagar on the 19th, where you know that the whole incident was played out as if one community is responsible for all the terror in the country. This notion leads us to what kind of a situation? You know that in Delhi earlier, when Muslim boys were picked up, it was mostly earlier from old Delhi, you know, where relatively less educated people were picked up. Now the emphasis is on more educated youngsters. If you are uneducated, you are doomed. If you are educated, you are doomed. What kind of a future that is being envisaged for our youth by our country when this is the situation? It is not good for the country that when the youth of the country feels that if you are uneducated, you can't have your life, a free life. If you are educated, again you can't have a life which is much more progressive, which can give not only the community but the whole nation something in return. So that is the situation. That should not happen. And I have viewed what was happening in Jamia Nagar, in Butler House earlier, in the broad context of what was happening in the nation as a whole, where, as was mentioned earlier, what was happening in Orissa or in Karnataka or earlier in Gujarat and so on, and what is happening now in Delhi. This has to be viewed in the context of how the fascist kind of imagination of a nation, that others who does not fit well with this monolithic notion of the nation should be dealt with, that notion is spreading all across the country. And we have to take it as a political fight. A political fight in the sense not only of political parties, etc., but also a long-term political fight where the democratic fabric of this country is kept intact. That is our main goal. And we have to fight for that. Because this cannot be undone. The nature of the state which uses force against its own people, the nature of organizations which preaches hatred, these things cannot be undone by wishful thinking alone. It has to be done in systematic manner by discerning citizens of the country, by fighting for the spirit of the nation, which should be democratic and secular, where the diversity of the country is kept intact. I'll stop by pointing towards another point which is very important about the changing nature of our state. You know that